Okay, good morning. I think we can start. Thank you for coming for this session on team building. We decided to come up with this session just to share some of the key findings from research around team building as part of our knowledge sharing with fellow HR colleagues and then other managers from other professions who may be interested in the field of team building. I've spent a few days ago looking at the best research available to look at team building and how it works. My name is Nguwi, and I will be taking you through this presentation. We've got roughly about 30 slides, but we can also discuss either as we're going or at the end of the session. And I hope you will benefit from the thing that we're going to be sharing. So we'll talk about team building. I'm sure all of us do at one stage or the other, you've been involved in team building. And a noble idea. And I've also noted that most of the time when there is a problem of conflict or people not working together, the default intervention is team building. I don't know what kind of results you are getting in your own intervention with team building, but we'll share what we know about team building. Okay, so the first thing that we need to understand is that team building is one of the many interventions that you can use to ensure that people probably work together and work towards common goal. That's normally the focus of team building. If you look at any team sports, it could be soccer, basketball, hockey, the focus is on delivering on a particular outcome that depends on all of the people that are working there. It can't be one person winning. It has to be the contribution of a significant number of the people that are in that team. So team building interventions are known to improve team dynamics and general satisfaction within the team. But however, their effectiveness in terms of even these particular two outcomes, it depends on how we implement it. And there's lots of debate around how we can implement team building to the satisfaction of the people that set out to bring these interventions out. Before we go into some of the outcomes, one of the key elements in team building is that I know when we put a group of people together, we always call it a team. But one of the key components that qualifies any group as a team is that the tasks are interdependent. Whatever they're doing is interdependent. So A depends on B, B depends on C, and vice versa. If the outcomes are not interdependent, you can't, it's actually probably a waste of time to talk about team. Because a team has got to work that is interdependent. That's how effective team performance can only come up if the work is interdependent. You can see this is from the Science for Work website. For those that want to also learn about team building, there's a lot of research in the Science for Work. It's supported quite by a number of donors, and Professor Robbie Briner also contributes there, and quite a number of other scientists that do contribute to the Science for Work website. So if you look at that, you can see that performance is highest when there is outcome and task interdependence. You can see at the top there, where there's plus there, you can see there's outcome interdependence versus task interdependence. That's where you get the best performance when you're talking about the team. But if the outcomes are not interdependent and the tasks are also low on interdependence, you can see poor outcomes likely, some probably performance advantage if the outcome is interdependent, but the tasks are not interdependent. But the best way to get the best out of your team is to make sure that whatever you're calling it is important. It's important for you to be aware that you can't talk of building a team when the tasks are not interdependent. Okay, that diagram speaks volume about what are the conditions for you to be able to start talking about a team. And I hope we are together there, because that's key, so that you can understand the rest of the presentation. That for a team to work effectively, you need to make sure that there is a high task interdependence, there is a high outcome interdependence, which means the outcome that we are focusing on it requires all of us to put our heads together and our effort together. That's the outcome interdependence. And also, if the tasks are interdependent, which means the tasks are designed so that members depend on each other to effectively get resources and coordinate. The coordination, the resource allocation, the sharing of those resources, if there's a high task interdependence, that tend to happen. I do know that there's also a lot of research that seems to show that most of the what we are calling teams are actually groups of people that have been put together for various reasons, but they're actually not teams. Okay, let's look at, sorry, I don't know what's happening there. Okay, I looked at some of the best research. On that research, let me just emphasize that when I was looking at this research, I looked at meta-analysis research and the experiments that have been done. Those are the two forms of evidence that are top-notch in terms of quality of the research done. I didn't look at individual research where someone just does their own research and it's not highly cited, and also the research is not, if the research is not either meta-analytic or longitudinal or experiments, I excluded those, even if they had results that look positive or negative. I excluded those because of the quality of the research. I thought for purpose of policy and intervention that work, you need really to worry about the quality of the research that you're looking for. Those that are in social science, I'm sure you know, when you talk about meta-analysis, the consolidation of the best research available on a particular subject, and they look at what is the key outcome that is coming out of there, what are the key findings and insights that are coming out of there. That's what I depended on in a few experiments. So when I consolidated this research, what I found is that team building interventions have got a negligible overall effect on performance. And I want to tell you to take note of that. They've got a negligible overall effect on actual performance of the team for various reasons. Some of them are intervention related. What type of interventions are you doing? And how long the intervention is. For your own information, interventions that are longer tend to have a better impact on team performance. What I'm saying is a 1 or 2 day team building effort will not improve performance significantly, but they need to be follow up where there's coaching, people getting together, looking at what they've agreed to make sure that those issues are implemented. But I do know that in practice, most of the time when we do team building, we just do a once-off. It could be 5 days, but it's a once-off. People playing games and doing other things, hiking and things like that. Nothing wrong with that. It enhances what is called social cohesion. But when you look at performance overall, all the research is showing that there is negligible overall effect on performance. Yeah. For example, if it's an executive team, does their performance improve, both in terms of objective and subjective measures? All subjective measures, there's slight positive effect, particularly on role clarification. People really love, most of the team buildings that I've seen is people don't really focus on role clarification. Who is doing what is the scope of their work, what authorities do they have? And if you clarify that as part of your team building effort, they tend to be positive effect on performance. This is subjective performance. But there's no significant impact, with some studies even showing slight decrease in performance after team building. Because sometimes you go there and unearth deeper seated conflicts that probably are not solved by just running around and playing volleyball. That would need a much more structured, coaching-oriented kind of intervention to be able to get the results. What also came out overall is that the effectiveness of the team building effort decreased as the size of the team increased. These are the core findings of the research, all the core findings about the research on team building. But again, remember, I said this is not a prescription. This is what I found from research, not my own thinking. This is what I found from research. You may have other individual research that has been done. And I also want to emphasize that I focused on meta-analytic studies, longitudinal studies, and I focused on experiments. And those are considered the top notch in terms of the quality of evidence. I didn't want to come here and give you subjective assessments of the research. I thought I should look at what is considered globally. Even if you go to CIPD, you will also find that they got some of the research there, which I tapped into, but I consolidated with some from the Center for Evidence-Based Management and also some from the Science for Work, and also some of the research that I've done on some of the well-cited meta-analytic studies. So I want to repeat again, team building interventions have got a negligible overall effect on actual performance. Then when you look at subjective versus objective performance, there's slight positive effect, particularly with the role clarification. What is the lesson here? If you're going to do team building, you may benefit from, first of all, probably in the introductory stage, to just make sure that each person is very clear on what do they do, what scope, what authority do they have, who else do they interact with, and what kind of assistance do they need from those people. That would probably have an effect in terms of understanding people, understanding their boundaries, which rarely happens anyway in most of the executive teams. That's why you'll find people stepping on each other's toes simply because there is no role clarification. Yes, role clarification could be outlined in the job description, but that's not enough. But if you want to really have a significant impact, especially if you are using team building as an intervention, role clarity is very important. Then on objective measures, like I indicated, there are no significant impact with some studies even showing a decrease in performance. And again, the size of the team matters. It's not all gloomy in terms of team building. If you go to the Science for Work, where there's a paper there that is consolidated some of the meta-analytic studies on does team building benefits teams, you will notice that, yes, there is research there that is showing that team building interventions do have an effect in terms of some outcomes. Team members feeling about the team and their colleagues. Normally, after team building, you feel better about that. Colleagues, you know them better, things like that. And that's where it ends most of the time. And there is a tendency to relapse back to the usual ways. Although social cohesion is the biggest benefit of team building, where people just generally understand each other. Team interaction that helps solve and communicate, collaborate, and manage conflicts, that does help. But its impact then on performance on objective performance is negligible. But you don't discount team building, especially where you think that there's tension generally in the team. People don't seem to know each other well, and things like that. You definitely will benefit from just having I know you kind of team building session, and this kind of team building session will probably benefit from the social kind of interaction team building sessions that we normally do. You go there, play games, mountain hiking, and things like that. But if you really want a proper team building, which I think you must really ask yourself upfront and say, do we really want, do we have a problem? Because most of the time, sometimes we do these things without actually identifying a problem that needs to be solved. Some of the things that need to be solved do not necessarily need team building. You must ask yourself, do we really have a problem? And if there is a problem, and I would assume the best way to start is say, do we have a performance problem? Yes, if we have a performance problem, would team building help? And what are the causes of this performance problem? Maybe people not working together, just too much conflict, there's too much toxicity in the team. Yeah, you can structure it needs a structured process. But I also want to, based on this, the research that I looked at, I also want to emphasize that a 1 day, 5 day interaction, and they call it team building, does not have a lasting impact. Most of these social cohesion things tend to fade away. There will be remnants basically of some benefits, but they tend to fade away as you go. So it's important. Let's look at what are the key drivers, the main factors that influence team performance. Because this slide, if you can take a picture, that's the goal of whatever you're going to do on team building, because it does. It's the core of what you want to do and what you can achieve in terms of effect size is almost like correlation in the sense that you are looking at the impact in terms of team performance. What would drive team performance? But unfortunately, most of the things that I've listed here are actually neglected in team building. Rarely dealt with. Yes, occasionally in some instances, you might find that they are dealt with. You see there, the biggest contribution to team building, these are extracted directly from the meta-analytic studies, probably one of the best studies done so far, a consolidation of studies done so far on team building. So you can see there, psychological safety, the outcome that it improves is task performance. You can see the effect out of 5 there, you can see the effect there, 4 or 0.4 if you want. Sorry, 4 out of 5. You can see that it has the greatest impact on teams, as you can see there. Together with the shared thinking or what is called cognitive consensus. Basically, a cognitive consensus is where you harness various ideas of the people and allow them to speak out. It's almost related to psychological safety. That's why all of them have got the biggest impact. But you are looking at cognitive diversity rather than cognitive consensus. Cognitive diversity is you allow people of different views to air their concerns and harness those concerns. And also, if you look at research, the diversity that we normally say diverse teams perform better. What has been found is that it's actually not demographic diversity that helps that. Is the cognitive diversity that comes from maybe women, from younger people versus older people and things like that. It's the cognitive diversity rather than the demographic diversity that matters. So if you were to prioritize, if you are to doing team building, number one, I need to make sure that there is we deal with psychological safety in the team. Number two, we need to make sure that we deal with the cognitive diversity, which is the shared thinking. The next one will be we will need to deal with personality of the individual. Do we really know before you go for team building? Sometimes it actually helps you to make sure that you actually are aware who is who in terms of their personality makeup in the team. That has got a huge impact in terms of how people collaborate. And I'm sure you know, as I will explain later on, that if your team has got highly narcissistic people or highly neurotic people, people who are very tense, or people who are very they will get very angry very quickly, very toxic and things like that. That team is unlikely to survive. Even if we come up with very good ideas, that there's some who criticize in a derogatory way to make sure that other people don't contribute. So the team diversity is key in terms of that. So psychological safety, cognitive diversity, team diversity, all these are key issues that you need to do with trust. You can see also on 3 out of 5, it tend to change attitudes and information sharing to improve, in some extent, performance. This does not discount what I said. Remember, we looked at the objective performance versus subjective performance. On subjective performance, when people say, okay, how are you feeling after team building? Are you feeling okay? People say, yes, yes. That tends to increase. But on the actual objective performance, they say, look, if you are working on a team of programmers, we take them out for team building and we address the issues that matter. There is a slight increase in performance, in objective performance, but also there are other studies that are showing that the performance of the team actually goes down. But that has been attributed mainly to how we are doing the team building itself. So that's important to look at. Then social cohesion is also uh, an issue. That social cohesion can come if you do exercises like your volleyball and things like that, and all those games that we do. But one of the things that we normally do when we do team building, which is bring social cohesion, is the issue to just knowing each other. Who are you? Personally, okay, understand people sharing personal information. Okay, so there are some people who work together in a team, they don't even know where their colleague stays, for example. They don't even know whether they've got kids, what kind of pressures they have outside their work situation. Those kind of situations take an hour or two in a team building session to be able to do that, probably at the beginning. I'll start with that, then go with the issues to do with clarity about where are we going as a team, what are the top priorities of the team and things like that. A role clarity comes in the first half day, you focus on those things so that you can lay the groundwork. Then immediately after that, you go to psychological safety. Then the issues to do with the games that build social cohesion, they can come later once you've dealt with the more major issues, psychological safety, trust, personality, and things like that. Those are important issues to look at. And collective memory and things like that. These are all issues that are important for you to be able to look at. So when you look at that effect side, this is a summary of what drives team performance from research. And if you want to win, unless you don't believe in the research, which is fine, I do believe in the research because I think a lot of the time, some of the innovations, we waste a lot of money on things that do not work, but it's also good to just getting together. And also, there's nothing wrong to telling your team, guys, we're just going to have fun. And I've had teams that actually tell me, Mr. Gumunola, it's too much on fire. Ngatingonofara itodhakwa todzoka totamba todzoka and things like that. It's okay. And we do facilitate that, but you also need to be very clear upfront that don't expect anything tangible out of that. You can have a bit of social cohesion after that. So if you were going to do team building, even as you do your justification for team building, you must think about these issues. What are those things that are going, and even the consultant who is going to be doing the team building, you must make sure that they address these issues, because those are the issues that deal with the real issues. You can have if you're having 3 days, you can have your funny, where you're just drinking and doing other things that are social. At the last day, once you've dealt with some of the core issues, the worry that I normally see is that people go for team building first few days, yes, people are chatting to each other, the social cohesion is high. They get into the thick of things in terms of the work, everything disappears. And they start from zero again, and things don't change. I do have quite a number of case studies which I should write about in the coming weeks, and just to share with people what can go wrong when you're doing the team building. So successful teams, we've already talked about a good mix of different personalities is okay. Sometimes, because the unfortunate part is you can't change these personalities. The help of having the personality assessment done upfront is that it then helps you to know who is who. Not necessarily that you must change them. I don't even recommend anyone that you must change someone's personality because it's largely hereditary. They won't change. They may try to pretend to change, but they won't change. So what you do is just knowing each other. I know John, I know Violet is a bit aggressive. So when I approach Violet, I know how to approach them because they're aggressive. I know Sam agrees with everything that I say, whether right or wrong. You also know how to approach them. All these things, we do talk about them at the beginning of the team buildings. Here is your team, guys. If you don't want me to disclose your name, this is how we do it, and I'll show you a sample as we go through the session. Psychological safety, we've already talked about that. Goal clarity, we've already talked about. This is what Google found. Remember, Google did a very big experiment on teams, and this is what they found. A good mix of personality, psychological safety, goal clarity, and all the other things that I mentioned in the previous slide, they were there. But the other previous slides is not Google. I just thought this, let me show this one from successful teams. Because Google did an experiment. This one that I showed you is a consolidation of meta-analytic studies. This one is the experiment that were done by Google. But the biggest contributor to success in terms of actual performance, not subjective performance, they found that it was the psychological safety, goal clarity, and the mix, the personalities that are in there. Sometimes you do an assessment of the team, you find it's a highly toxic people, it has got highly neurotic people. Highly neurotic and narcissistic people, generally, they want to be the dominant party in anything that they do. So you find that there are clashes that are there because someone thinks that someone is dominating the either it's discussion or the power that they have and things like that. Okay, so psychological safety is the general atmosphere that allows employees to feel comfortable expressing their thoughts, both negative, bad, good, and everything. It's just the freedom to be able to say what you want without necessarily being ridiculed by your boss and even from your colleagues. That's what is called psychological safety. And for me, from my experience during all the 24 or so years of being in HR and consulting, interacting with many organizations, I see this as the biggest gap that is there. People pretend, people tell people what they want to hear and things like that. Surprisingly, I was also looking at research to do with the boards, company boards. One of the things that we found is that because I'm relating this because the board also must work together as a team. One of the things that we found is that boards that succeed have got a different kind of uniqueness that they have. For example, what research found that most of the successful boards and failed boards have got the same makeup generally in terms of structure, in terms of skills mix, everything. Just look around even locally. You find that there is no board that is failing, that is short of finance people, that is short of HR people, that is short of procurement, marketing. All the skills that you require, they are there. So boards don't fail because of lack of skill. No. Boards fail because people can't speak the truth. You need a few truth tellers in any board and any team. If you're going to imagine if you could turn your team into truth tellers, we just tell each other the truth. There's nothing really to take it personal. If things are not working, we tell each other exactly as it is. Things are not working. That's the kind of atmosphere that you want if you want to build a team. The way you are able to ask questions, get feedback, ask those difficult questions, ask for help. Remember, I'm focused on psychological safety at this point because it's one of the key ones. Remember, it's one of the key drivers and trust and other things that I've already shown you. Admit errors, ask for clarification, disagree. If you go into a meeting or a team and you're doing team building and everyone agrees, you're really not building. Because remember, psychological safety is not consensus. Psychological safety is not being nice. You can be really tough and still respect people and talk and say the truth. Okay, so it's like saying, so look, the road from here to Masvingo is 300 kilometers. When someone says it's 295, someone says it's 250. So telling someone the truth should not be offensive because it's a fact. You're talking facts. Okay. You try to take away the emotional part of trying to disparage other people and just focus on the facts. And you can't take away facts. Facts are facts. And for those that want to read, I still recommend because they do. The reason why I recommend this book is it really speaks to the things that you encounter in your organization around psychological safety and you can relate to them. Creating a fearless organization, the title is the best title if you look at what I'm trying to convey here, that allow people to be themselves across the whole organization. If you allow people to be themselves and say the truth, You'll find things don't go unreported. See, people say things up front. If there's a problem, they'll tell you. If they're winning, they'll tell you. It's like Arsenal people, and I do support Arsenal for the record. And now it's much better. My colleagues that support Arsenal, one of the key challenges that I faced with them, we fought over it, is that whenever Arsenal loses, they'll tell you we've played very well. But we have not won. First of all, you must acknowledge that they have not won. And most organizations, even teams, don't want to acknowledge they are losing. Okay, they must face the truth. Okay, so you must face the truth together. And after facing the truth, remember the best way of solving problems is to identify the source of the problem. And you can only identify the source of the problem if you tell each other the source. But the general trend that we find, and also from the research that I was looking at, is that punishing dissenting voices breed an atmosphere of fear and conformity. That's what we find. People agree in the meeting. When they walk out, they say, this is rubbish, this person is crazy, and all the things like that. So allow people to speak out on issues without being punished. So I will not go back to the Google one because I've already talked about that. Another interesting study, they discovered that positive relation between psychological safety and various organizational outcomes such as job satisfaction and performance, which is something that we have already looked at. So if you are doing a psychological safety, so if you are doing team building, I would recommend that you do assess psychological safety for everyone going for team building. You assess personality for everyone doing for team building. If you want, you can then assess trust for everyone doing team building. If you want, you can assess all the things that I was talking, cognitive diversity, and things like that. That slide that I showed you, role clarity, assess all those things and they have the facts before you go for team building so that you can have everything. This is just a sample of some of the questions in the psychological safety tool, which is readily available. If you want to use the tool, please look for the validated one. There are others that are just creating things. Don't use those. And there's also recent research showing that psychological safety is associated with better mental health generally, especially in Japanese employees. In Japan, they work very hard. And sometimes there's so much stress and toxicity, but they found that when they create psychological safety, people are able to say, no, you know what, I can't work today because of these issues. And people now start understanding each other. There's another, this interesting meta-analysis study, especially around the innovation. Companies that have innovated, they found that they got very high psychological safety. I looked at this meta-analysis study that examined 94 independent samples from 85 articles with a total sample size of 90,000. And what they found is that there is a psychological safety is a significant positive effect on employee innovation, a correlation of 0.3, which is 0.299, and team innovation and a correlation of 0.4. You can see the impact there. If you really work on the psychological safety side, I would do, as an HR innovation, invest more in doing this. I know the client that we were working with, while we didn't go deeper into the actual assessment of psychological safety, I think we had a very good discussion around when we're talking about teams. But I would still encourage you to look at your executive team. What is the level of psychological safety in the room? Because if you do a proper analysis, you produce a detailed report on psychological safety in the team and use that as a starting point. Look at trust issues as well. So if you are going for team building, this is what you do. You look at psychological safety in this fashion. Because you want to be able to say psychological safety on one side. Both the various facets of psychological safety. There is what is inclusion safety. Do people allow you to be included in what they're doing? Learner safety. Can you learn? Contributor safety and challenges. So can you challenge things? So you can see the employees. Let's say we're 12 of us going to team building. This is what this map helps you to see how at the level of psychological safety. You can see there are more reds in this particular team, which means this team will very likely have challenges. But if I'm doing an intervention, I will know the major problem is around challenger safety and to some extent learner safety and also inclusion safety. Contributor safety, yes, there are problems, but it's not as big as in other areas. So that's what we do. We are going there with the evidence. You know what really constrains people in terms of being themselves and also promoting a psychological safe work environment for the team. Others, what they do is they do a psychological safety survey for all the employees generally in the organization. As a starting point, then break that into various subgroups in terms of either executive team, by level. You can break that by department and then could actually do a heat map like this one for departments, and it will show which department has got the lowest psychological safety. And most of the time, if you really go deeper, you find that The team that has got the lowest psychological safety probably performs badly in long term. They may have, but normally you find that the leadership there probably uses intimidation and other tactics to drive performance. But eventually, those that use intimidation, research seems to show that people become to get to a stage where they're just hard. You're taught in Shona, people just don't care anymore, and things like that. And you don't want your team to get to that stage where they really don't care anymore. Okay, so psychological safety, they're critical. So I also went deeper. McKinsey did a study in 2022, which I found to be very useful. And this is a proper scientific study that they did. They found that what it actually drives psychological safety is the leadership within the team. And they found that leaders, you can see the correlations there. The leaders that actually, if you see there is a solid line there, it's significant correlation. So you can see there, and you remember what the way they did the study, ultimately at the bottom there, you can see psychological safety. But psychological safety is moderated by what is called positive team climate. So first of all, you need to create what is called a positive team climate that will lead to psychological safety. So I'll take you through these results mean. So you can see at the extreme left there, authoritarian leadership, there is a negative correlation with psychological safety direct there. So as long as your team has got authoritarian leader, you can forget about psychological safety. Okay, that's what it's showing. You can forget about psychological safety. So you can already tell that one of the biggest intervention in terms of for psychological safety in team building is you need to make sure that the leadership itself is more on the consultative side. Do they consult? Do they just dictate and give people things? Okay, so you can see their consultative leadership, direct impact without going through positive climate is 0.22, which is correct, which is good, very good correlation there. Consultative leadership going through positive, first creating a positive team climate. Ultimately, the impact on psychological safety is 0.77. It's massive. You can see there. Almost 77% of the psychological safety, if you work on the consultative leadership, that creates a very positive team climate. You know, when you know, even when people have no money or whatever other things, when you create a positive team climate environment as a leader, you can see the impact it has on psychological safety. Then supportive leadership, direct impact to positive team climate is 0.3, and also it has got the same impact as consultative leadership when you've created a positive team climate 0.77. Challenging leadership, where you're really challenging people and things like that, the impact is positive, but it's on the lower side, 0.05. So the first solution to creating a positive team climate, work on your leadership. Surprisingly, when people are doing leadership development, they rarely address the issue that we are talking about. Uh, uh, um, they rarely address these issues. So if we're doing leadership development, even if it's supervisor management development, please incorporate some of these things. If you really want to create a positive work climate and eventually psychological safety, you need to work and build a team that has got a leadership team, management supervisor team that lean more towards consultative and supportive leadership, to some extent challenging, but taking out the authoritative. Remember, it's situational leadership. You don't use the same style all the time. But what we are trying to encourage you is your intervention must predominantly support a consultative leadership kind of stuff and a supportive leadership kind of stuff. But also, while I highlight this, also remember leadership is largely driven by the personality of the person as well, which is very hard to change. So you get marginal improvements, but it's not an easy task. And I want you to conceptualize this as a whole package of interventions with its limitations that are there, which I have already highlighted. So that's why you find most of the leadership development process has no impact on actual performance, because it's a mix of really working things that work and things that don't work. People feel good after that, but thereafter, nothing actually works. So what if we were looking at the leadership program that you need to work on in terms of building that kind of leadership style that's supportive? You need to work on open dialogue skills. You need to work on cultural awareness, self-awareness, developing high-quality social relations in the teams, mindful listening, situational awareness, dealing with the issues to do with situational humility is a key issue, and sponsorship kind of stuff. Those are the key issues. So I'm just highlighting, if you were to really want to have an intervention to do with teams, this is some of the things that, if you, for example, if you're going to build a team, let it not be a one day event. So you may want to start, okay, you do all the assessment that we talked about, psychological personality, trust, and all the things that I showed in that slide. Then you find out whatever you find out, then you say, look, one of the things that we need to do before, as a pre-team building session, I need to work on making sure that we deal with the leadership. A 1 day, 2 day getting together of the leaders that are going to be part of that team building to just talk about open dialogue skills, train them on open dialogue, cultural awareness. If you're a cultural diverse kind of team, quality social relationship in teams, how do you build those? How do you do practice mindful listening? Because most people find it very difficult to listen without necessarily focusing on the responding. They find it very difficult to withhold the judgment. Situation awareness and dealing with unconscious bias and situational humility is key in terms of that. Okay, then what are some of the issues that you can help to build that will benefit psychological safety? Role clarity, because it takes away the issue of conflict, peer support, independence, learning orientation, positive leader relations, which is what I was talking about. Those are the things that then lead to, you'll find that once you create psychological safety, people start sharing information more. There's more satisfaction generally with the environment. For learning more, the engagement goes up, improvement in performance outcomes. But again, remember what I said, depending on how you structure your intervention, the improvements can be negative in actual performance. Okay, one of the tools that you can use is what is called organizational network analysis, which I encourage you. We've done this quite a number of organizations, and people get surprised by what they find. Organizational network analysis is you go into the team, there's an organizational network analysis survey that is done, which is a questionnaire, and find out, for example, what are the problematic areas, communication, knowledge sharing, do people share information, all the problematic areas. You ask people, there's how you design what's called, it's called ONA, it's called in short ONA, organizational network analysis. You're trying to understand how the network works. We have done the personality, psychological safety, you've done the leadership style, kind of leadership style, current leadership style that they use. You have done your trust assessment. It's a combo, it's a package that you need to do. I would encourage you to do organizational network analysis as well. And this network analysis, you can see from this example that from this organizational network analysis, we look at network density, network strength, network centrality, network range. And let me give you some of the key issues that we find. So if you find this, you can also, there's also other measures that I have not included. You can also see if there are factions within the team, they emerge from the network. With now AI, you can run this very easily. But I do have a software that we use that is free, actually, that has been done by researchers from MIT that you can use for organizational network analysis, and it's a free network. A bit complicated, but once you have loaded your data, all the other analysis it's done by this social network analysis. So you can see, like for example, you can see here in this network, you can see there's Tino there in the peripheral, disconnected from the rest of the team, and they're very likely to exit. Basically, they're isolated. Maybe it's in knowledge sharing, it's social interaction, it's communication. You can see they're isolated there. And this person already, if you then talk to them directly, you then see that there's a problem there. Then when you look at the other people there, you can see that there is Inyasha there, who is a new knowledge broker. Basically, this is a knowledge network. There is a knowledge broker. So which means people on the other side of Nyasha, on the right, and those on the left, can't cross that boundary without Nyasha. This could be a PA, this could be some HR person, which means you can't reach all the circles that you are seeing there are those that represent people that are in the team. Okay, you can see here there who is central to the network. Everyone seems to go, if it's communication, everyone seems to go via here there. Otherwise, the people who are in the periphery of the network, Tino, who is really in danger of exiting, then Manja there, Mary there in the periphery of the network. So you can write a detailed report. I wish I could share some of the report that we shared, the clients where we actually do a detailed report. All this is pre-work that you do before you go into your team. You will say, this I'm only telling you if you are really serious about team building. But if you are going to socialize, please continue with whatever way you were doing, where you're going to play soccer and do other things. Those, remember, I was saying playing soccer and other things are important for social cohesion, but they won't help you in terms of actual real performance improvements. Okay. So when putting the team together, I've already talked about the size, we talked about the personality, and on personality, the problematic areas normally is if you've got highly neurotic people in there, and in some teams that tend to succeed very well tend to have highly agreeable people, but not to the extreme extent where people just agree even if they disagree, and things like that. And also a good mix of extroverts tend to spice issues. So you also do a similar heat map pre-team building where you look at the team personality. These are the employees, and you look at the personalities, you can already see there are problematic people there in terms of neuroticism. Quite a number. This team is likely to be toxic. If I look at employee number 5 going downwards, majority of them are really in a bad area. Also, I find highly disagreeable people. Employee number 5, number 6, number 8, number 9, number 19. These are all people that are highly disagreeable. They tend to be argumentative. They speak well, it's that the people are speaking. They complete sentences on your behalf. They're very likely to also create a very toxic environment. Remember, in the research, the combination of a low agreeableness trait in the highly neurotic individual. This one, if you look at the numbers on the neurotic one, it's reverse scored. The higher score, you are better. The low score, you are okay. But ordinarily, when you say someone is neurotic, it's negative. But we reverse scored that so that you can see that. And this is a real team. This is what I'm showing. I actually extracted from a real team building intervention. So you can also see that the people, like for example, if you look at trait number 1, you've got 4 people who are highly rigid in the sense that they are not open to experience. Openness to experience, people who score very low, look at the scores, 2, uh, 2, 3 there, it means that they're very rigid. They stick to what they know. They don't want to change. Those kind of people, depending on where they sit within the organization in terms of authority, they can stifle any form of innovation that comes from the team. And also, the good thing is that if you look at conscientiousness there, the team is highly organized. There are quite a number of people who are organized. The blue that are seeing, there's people who are diligent, organized, they get things done, and you also get a bit of extrovert there. But we do further analysis in terms of distribution of these people. And upfront, we then tell you, look, this team is highly toxic. This team is likely to suffer this kind of consequences. Well, this team analysis, if I would show you a deeper analysis, you will see that it really tells you in advance that this is the problem with your team. Even if you don't tell us, we will know from this analysis. This is a problem with your team. The only exercise, team building exercise for us to succeed at this and this and this. And imagine we combine social network analysis, which is this one that I was showing you. We combine with psychological safety, trust score, leadership style, current leadership style in the team. We combine it with personality and things like that. You have a solid. It may look like it's a lot of work, but again, if you really want to go proper team building that you have got a lasting impact on your organization and performance, you may need to do that, because some of the things really, the fluffy stuff people that they do and just run and there's no impact. Okay, so effective team building, what to focus on? The defining of goals, I think I've covered this. I won't look at that. Which method in team building? This is from the Science Center for Science for Work papers. You'll find that simulations, where you actually simulate the actual work, not just doing team building, running around and doing games. That's the best form of team building. Team reviews, teams monitor the quality of their team work during in situ reviews. That's the best. Workshops, the least effective, and the education teams receive lectures, again, the least effective. So these are the team building approaches that have been found in terms of impact, real impact in terms of performance. The social cohesion side, you can still do the games, they're okay. But if you really focus on performance, you need to think about that. Okay. In summary, I think we've done 40, almost 45 minutes. Thank you so much, and I can take questions. Any questions? Please feel free to ask questions. No questions. Okay, thank you so much.
Hello,
We'll give, yeah, yes, get on.
Isaac here. I'm not an HR practitioner myself, but I found this was very informative, especially that I've been on the receiving end, especially of these team building exercises. What I found very interesting was those pre-team building exercises. But what I wanted to find out is, does one need to do all those pre-tests, or there are specific ones that needs to happen before the team building can be done with the mind of having a specific focus?
Very good question there. So what happens is sometimes because before we do the team building, you then sit down with the management and say, what are the bigger issues? So some of those pre-exercises are tailored to the problems. But the other challenge is that sometimes if you just take the word from management at face value, they may mislead you into focusing on the wrong things as well. And I also want to emphasize that because focus on the things in the sense that they may say, I think it's personality clashes and things like that. Then you just do personality, because personality one doesn't even take 15 minutes. The psychological safety again doesn't take 15 minutes, less than 10 minutes. The social network one, very depending on the issues, again less than 10 minutes. So in total, all these can be completed in less than an hour. But the richness of the information that comes out there. But again, I agree with you. Sometimes we tailor make these to specific problems that have been identified prior to the us starting to prepare for the team building. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for the nice response.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just a word of appreciation. Thank you very much, Mr. Nguwi. That was very much informative.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So record this. We will share so what you can do is we have your emails all from the Zoom registration. We'll share with you tomorrow once we've edited, obviously we reduce background noise so that you can have another look at this information. I'm also in the process of, I have consolidated all the research that has been that has gone into this. I'm in the process of creating a podcast. You know, with AI now, I can look at the best evidence and create a podcast, and I'll share the podcast with you tomorrow as well, so that you can have two recordings. The other one is audio, just audio. This one will be this particular presentation that I did. You can look at those, reflect on them. When you get time, you can listen to this while you're driving and things like that. Hopefully, you will benefit from some of the information that we have shared. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Sir, there's a hand from Tapiwa Chirombo.
Yes, Tapio.
Thanks, Memory. Maybe mine was just to then to ask, in the event that we want to then have an individual to a team, and you know very well that specific individual is not fitting well to the team, and maybe possibly have explored all the ways to then improve their performance working with the team, but yet their contribution is still valuable. Is there a way of maybe incorporating their input, but also not directly working with a specific group or a specific team?
Yeah, but because remember, a very good observation. So at the beginning, remember, I said for you to talk about the team, the work must be interdependent. But we find in practice, some of the work doesn't need people to work together, really, in a sense. There are people who probably produce the best results on their own. But if you find the only challenge with the problematic individuals is, especially those that have got personality issues, you may take them for coaching, counseling, and things like that. But the best solution is just feedback. Dose them with feedback. Look, this is what your personality. Do you agree? And do you think that this will bode well with how others work with you and things like that? But you still give them an opportunity. They're brilliant people, but also remember, and I'm sure from general observation, not necessarily science, you have noticed that there are people who are brilliant in what they do technically, but terrible in terms of interactions with others. You still need them. So you find a way of accommodating them. But when we are doing team building, some of the time I actually have a very long session with these kind of people so that we can be on the same page. I said, look, my friend, you're a brilliant individual, but relationship wise, you are failing to build relationships. And why not work on a program to make sure that you talk less and listen more? Because sometimes the reason why sometimes we find it very difficult to gel in a relationship with other people is that we want to speak and respond quickly, but there's one way we were saying to the person, okay, just listen today, you don't respond today. You'll come with your response tomorrow. You find that the responses are much more better when they reflect and sleep over them than instant responses. So yes, you can accommodate these kind of people. But it depends on how open you are at the beginning, so that we can get this kind of information upfront. Then we work on a program to do that. And in some cases, I also do know other organizations that have actually taken some of the brilliant individuals to what I call the specialist psychologists who really go deeper into reflections, where we go deeper into just making sure that you start reflecting on who you are, especially on relationships with other people, just building relationships, working on building relationships. Remember, on one of the slides, I actually showed you one of the leadership components is building relationship, situational humility, and all those things. Those are the things that they get taught when they go there through simulations, not lectures. It's not lectures, actually through simulations where they are simulating in a real relationship with someone where they are simulating. Thank you. Another question before we close?
Yes, there are two hands from Mr. Bruce
Yes,
Nyoni and Innocent Ka.
Okay, let's start with Bruce.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Nguwi, for the presentation. I think I'd missed on the clarity of cognitive consensus versus cognitive diversity in terms of team performance.
So it's a continuum. So cognitive consensus and cognitive. So if you build cognitive consensus, remember cognitive is about thinking. Okay.
Yes.
So you are saying you start with the diverse ideas, assuming the psychological safety. You eventually end up with cognitive consensus is basically buy-in. Everyone has contributed, and everyone is on the same wavelength, or what, on the same wavelength in terms of what needs to be done to correct a particular situation or to solve a particular problem. That's what's called cognitive consensus, and it's required. Cognitive consensus, because you have allowed people to discuss, and then you carry them along until you get a stage where there's cognitive consensus. There's actually a very good study there that is in one of the Harvard Business Review article where they looked at cognitive consensus. This is the one that I was indicating that people, what they have now discovered, including McKinsey, is that where they are saying if you've got more half men, half women in a particular team, they do well. They now discovered that it's less about the gender. It's more about cognitive diversity and the consensus. That's what they found. So even the generations, it's more about cognitive diversity rather than consensus. If I get the article, because I have to cite it from the Harvard Business Review because I have exhausted my articles. But if I get it, I'll also share as part of the information that we're going to share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? There was someone else?
Yes, Mr. Nguwi.
Yes, Innocent. How are you?
I'm good yourself. Thanks very much. It was informative. But I wanted to ask on the type of games, maybe particularly on the issue of social interactions or stuff. Who really chooses those type of games? Because I think if you have been checking on social media, some of the games that we are actually seeing being done on team building, they are really worrisome. So I wanted to check who really chooses is it the management or the consultants?
There are some consultants. Remember, there are some consultants who will choose anything for people to just have fun. But remember, it doesn't help you that much. It can end up creating animosity. Imagine, I saw the other ones where people were kissing, almost kissing, sharing things with the mouth and things like that. Imagine you're taking people who are really don't like each other and things like that, and they end up doing such kind of things. You can aggravate. I think these are some of the kind of team building sessions that I was indicating earlier on in the research, to say sometimes what they found from a serious consolidation of research that some of the team building, actually, when people come back, the situation is worse than when they went there. So I would suggest that team building exercises be proposed by the consultant based on their pre-assessment, because for us, the pre-assessment are the key to determining what kind of games we should have. And you categorize them. We start with the serious matters that deal with psychological safety. There are games to do that. We then go, and on psychological safety, the best games are simulations. There are simulations that you can do, business simulations that you can do. Then you go to trust again, use simulations and things like that. Then when it now goes to the social side, you can allow management to bring in a bit of social side, but if it's an ethical consultant, you never allow those things where people are almost like they're in a porno movie kind of thing stuff in course. I also imagine if you were in some of the videos that I've seen, if you are a good brand of a company, imagine what happens, how people view your brand after that. There's certain things that you must just say no, whether the consultant is good or not, and say let's stick to the script in terms of what we want to achieve. And also when you engage the consultant, just remind them, you know what, we've got these business outcomes that we want to achieve. The fun is okay. On the last day, we can have fun, as much fun as possible, but ethical funny games. But the first 2 days, let's be serious and work on things because we want to. Well, the thing that normally happens is that whenever you do team building, you must have a before and after situation. And before you're saying, what are the things that we want to address now that are problematic? We list them 10. What are the current performance in those things? Conflict, people unhappy, or employee engagement, or whatever you found. And for example, if you got psychological safety in this case, we'll have the baseline information on psychological safety, on trust and leadership style. Then we do the intervention, we come back 6 months later and say, this is where let's do again a dipstick of the same issues. Where are we? Is there a gap? Are we moving? But again, remember, there is a very good paper that was done on team sports that I didn't include here that shows that the minimum that you need in terms of days to do team building, not necessarily continuous, is 2 weeks of interventions, coming back in situ discussions, in situ simulations, and things like that, where you run a pro. And you only employ this if you are really serious about team building. But I also do understand that most organizations would want to go for team building to have fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can just tell me, Mr. Nguwi, this one we're just having fun. It's not serious team building. We want just to have fun. We do that, and sometimes there's no need for free assessments. But if you really want to say, look, I want to address a business problem, and there's really a problem in your team, pre-assessment will help you a lot in terms of impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nguwi.
Thank you. And last question before I need to go into another meeting. Okay, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.